the Morning Woodward Show here on the Woodward Sports Network. We're fired up today. Tommy DeVito win. It's a great morning. It's a beautiful morning out here in Birmingham, Michigan, and we're joined by the one and only Matt Broder.
Let's go.
Who covers the Detroit Lions for Woodward Sports. And Broder, I know you did Woodward and Maine. You guys were probably speaking some facts on that. It's a fine program. It's a very fine program with Uncle T and Gabby. But I'll ask you, first question. Your reaction to the loss, and I want your concern level, maybe on a scale from 1 to 10, and just moving forward, because this Broncos game, man, I know we mentioned it last week that the schedule looks a lot different with how these teams are playing, but nothing's really changed for me with the Broncos. They have some impressive wins on their schedule so far. They beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bills. They just beat the Chargers, I believe, right? The Chargers, no Justin Herbert. Regardless, they're kind of on a hot streak, and they're trying to make the playoffs. They're well coached. Your thoughts on kind of the game itself and the upcoming matchup with the Broncos?
Yeah, well, just to get the Broncos out of the way, 6-7 weeks ago, I would have thought like this might be the easiest game on the Lions schedule.
Right.
One of those at the end of the season that I wasn't really worried about, and then all of a sudden, what is it? They won 7 of 8 or 6 of 7. They've turned their entire season around after getting rid of some of their players. So Sean Payton's got that team at least playing hard. They're winning games. They have a veteran quarterback. I'm not a huge Russ Wilson guy, but he's played well this season, and he's a vet, so he knows how to win. That's a dangerous ingredient coming here to Ford Field, where the Lions, especially after the Chicago Bears game, you could argue they're playing their worst football of the year. These last 4 games have not been so great. We haven't seen complete football, but this one against the Bears, it's a tough one. It was an offense. It was a game the offense lost. I think the defense did enough for them to win the game, to keep them in the game, but the offense looked bad. And just the timing of all this happening, when Philly's going down, they're going in the wrong direction. It almost feels like this is the opportunity to take a jump. Or with Dallas Cowboys going in the right direction for them, this is an opportunity to stay with them, and we're playing our worst football right now. So there's a lot of things they got to turn around, but because it was the offense that I believe lost them that game, I'm confident that they can turn that around. So my concern level after that Giants game is only a 3.
Yeah, and it's an interesting matchup, Sam, because you have a team that, with the Broncos, they take care of the football, they get takeaways. Like, again, the things that the Lions are trying to get back to, Broncos do it well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. All right, Broder, so how do I say this? One thing that concerns me a little bit about this team is that, at least when it comes to the play calling offensively, is they seem to abandon the running game, because even in the game against the Bears, it was a close game for the most part. They had a halftime lead. It was tied for a bit, and the running game actually, by the numbers, performed very, very well. And even when they had their home loss to the Packers at Ford Field on Thanksgiving, the running game by the numbers performed very, very well. And I think everyone in this room would agree that Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery as a tandem are everything we could have hoped for and even more, particularly Jahmyr Gibbs running the football. So, Broder, why do you think they do abandon the run sometimes so soon, and do you think it's wise?
I don't think it's wise. I can't always figure out why, because I don't feel like Ben Johnson's intimidated, but I feel like as soon as the Detroit Lions go down in the game, the game plan changes, or it switches, or they're almost not ready for putting it in the hands of Jared Goff, making it a pass-first game. But to do it, and especially to do it with Jared Goff, you need to establish that run game. A lot of those, it was somewhat misleading, the numbers, although they finished pretty well against the Bears. Jahmyr Gibbs had a big run early on in the game. There was a lot in, I don't want to say garbage time, but like the timing of their successful runs weren't that great. By the time they got to the second half, we saw Jared Goff on the offense in a lot of 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10s, 4th and 10s, a lot of situations where Chicago Bears or any defense can just blitz and get pressure on Jared Goff. That's where he's been struggling as of late. That's what the Bears were able to do on top of being able to rush 4 people. It was almost like they had no chance in that second half. It was an odd called game out of Ben Johnson. Something I maybe the first time I've said that since Ben Johnson's taken over. It was weird.
Now, I went back, and I kind of talked to you about this earlier, but I went back and wanted to rewatch the game last night because, typically Mondays are for overreactions. We watch the game live on Sunday, and then we come in Monday, share our thoughts. So last night, randomly, late at night, I was like, you know what, let's go back and rewatch. Let's see if I missed anything. And one thing I did notice, Broder, is besides, the 2 big plays from Aiden, not in a good way, in a bad way, the 4th down, jumping off sides, and of course him calling his own stunt, which resulted in Justin Fields rushing TD. the defense did enough to win.
Yeah.
Now, the offense, to me, right now, it is a concern, and whether it's a Goff issue or it's just a Ben Johnson issue, I want to ask you, at least with the quarterback, Jared, I want your thoughts kind of with the whole, because people now are all of a sudden, including myself, because, again, you drafted a guy in the third round named Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of upside. We understand that. Kind of your thoughts on the whole contract extension for Jared Goff. How should Brad approach that? Is he doing it the right way? Because I think not committing to him and letting this kind of play out and the storyline kind of play out for Jared, I think it's a smart thing to do at this point.
I agree. I agree. Imagine if they gave him some long-term extension 5-6 weeks ago, people would be up in arms right now. But I think all along this is the right way to do it, to see how things pan out, to see how he does this season, see how he does hopefully in the playoffs. The goal this season, the goal is to win a playoff game and beyond. So anything less than that, especially at this point in the season, would be a failure. So you got to look at that. But I hope both sides are looking at it with self-awareness and the fact that Jared Goff needs to know that he can't be the Jared Goff that we saw earlier in the season, that we saw most of last season, the second half of last season leading into this, without an elite offensive line. He needs a top 3 offensive line, top 5 offensive line to be able to have the time to run the play action, to be able to have time to find his second and third reads, because he hasn't been making the right reads. He really hasn't even been getting to his second reads. He's just trying to get the ball out as fast as possible. And with that line, he needs to be able to run the ball. So I hope he realizes whether he's deserved a $50 million contract in the NFL or not. I don't know. I don't think they can win if we're giving Jared Goff a $50 million contract because you can't build around him, which his deficiencies need. It needs offensive line in a run game. So those are the things that have to be weighed. I still support Jared Goff in the fact that with an offensive line, with the things right around him, he can lead this team deep in the playoffs, if not to the Super Bowl. But I don't know if moving forward they can keep the right people intact if they're paying a quarterback $50 million. And that's when Hendon Hooker comes in. His strengths are where a lot of Goff's weaknesses are. And I don't want to just disregard all of Goff's strengths and the things that he does, like leading the team and the things he can do pre-snap. He's been great. But a lot of the mobility issues, those are picked up by Hendon Hooker. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason. I know I just keep kind of a long-winded answer.
No, and I think with Jared, too, the one thing I believe is if you're not mobile, then you better have an elite arm. If you're going to stand in the pocket and be a statue, and Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, you better be elite. Now, most quarterbacks, especially in today's NFL, you got to be able to move. You got to be able to extend plays.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch the Cowboys-Eagles game, there's plays where Dak Prescott, and Sam, I keep going back to this because I'm a guy who craps on Dak Prescott a lot, but there's plays where he gets pressured, he escapes the pocket, extends plays, and something opens up for CD. So for Jared, if you're not mobile, you gotta have an arm. And speaking of that, Jamison Williams, in what he's been doing this year, he has not had more than 2 catches in a football game.
Yeah, that's
and the most targets he's had in a game was the Ravens game, and it was a blowout. So most of those were just, hey, he's down there somewhere, which I appreciate, but you'd like that to be more consistent. What's going on with the JMO stuff? I know they ask Dan about it every single week, and he's like, he deserves it.
Yeah.
But we don't see it. So what's up with the JMO? Is he going to get more than 2 catches?
He needs to.
He needs to
For them to win. He needs to be targeted at least 5 or 6 times. I'll say maybe he needs 5 or 6 touches a game. You got to find a way to get it in his hands. And there are some limitations with Jared Goff and throwing him the deep ball. Their timing isn't right. He's underthrown him a couple times, but this is where it falls on Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, to find a way to get the ball in his hands. And it can be done. You just got to do it within the 5 or 10 yard range. You got to be creative. It can't be the same reverse each game. It can't be the same route each game. But you can't tell me you can't get it in his hands 4 or 5 times a game. And if you do that, he's a game changer. It changes the entire way that the defense has to play you.
Yep.
I don't understand why they abandoned it in this Bears game. Almost after that deep throw, they didn't even attempt to get him the ball on any other short or intermediate route. It was very strange.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. And I know it seemed like you expressed a little bit of apprehension about Jared Goff and a big contract in the future. But let's talk about Jared Goff to finish this season, because I would argue that in 5 out of the last 7 games, he has either been bad or had some really bad moments. I mean, I'll break it down really quick right now.
Yeah.
In the game at Baltimore, leads his offense to 6 points, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. In the game against the Raiders, he threw a very bad pick 6 that kind of kept the Raiders in the game longer than they should have, but ultimately was a double-digit win. again, Chargers, great. You look at the Chicago Bears, he threw 3 interceptions he had a really, really bad first 56 minutes and 30 seconds of the game, led him to 2 game-winning drives. That's all well and good. And against the Packers, he had 3 fumbles, one of them returned for a touchdown and a loss. The Saints game, I'll say that was a good game because he played good, clean football and they won. And then this last game against the Bears, 2 interceptions and then a fumble, which you can argue was Graham Glasgow's fault or Jared Goff's. So I believe that Jared Goff over the last 7 games has played one of his worst stretches of his career, besides for 2016
especially
or something
Lions
like that.
Career.
Yeah, 100%.
Lions
So
career.
do you think he will be able to turn it around in these last 4 games, or do you think it's a concern even this year and moving into the playoffs?
I think he can turn it around, but I also think it's a concern that's valid. Because I think Jared Goff, his room for error is so small.
Yes.
And he was playing near perfect football at the beginning of the season, and this offense was rolling. He has to play like that for them to look like that and for this offense to win. It can be done. We saw it. But it's not easy to do. And it's especially not easy to do in the playoffs. So that's where it's tricky. I've seen enough of a sample size where I've seen how good he can be. But you're right, this last 5 to 7 game stretch, it's as bad as it was when in that first season when he came. You gotta take care of the ball. Even I know there are interceptions that are on 4th down or that don't really count, but they're also missed interceptions, dropped interceptions by Jalen Johnson in that Bears game. It all balances out. He's got to take care of the ball more. But I know he is capable of leading this team. He's got to play near perfect football, and that's part of the problem. That's part of the reason to be optimistic, but it's also that concern. So it's a little bit of everything wrapped up in one, and that makes the contract discussion hard too. But in terms of this team, he's got to play near perfect football for them to win.
Yeah, no question about that. And it's funny. I just looked up the snap count for Jameson, and he played 58% of the snaps.
Yeah, see, that's the part that doesn't make sense. He's out there enough. They trust him, but they're not. Then
there's DPJ who played a Michigan man who played 14% of the snaps and got a catch. It's just doesn't make sense. But I want to ask you at least for some of the injury updates, because Frank, he's kind of. I don't know which way Frank. Dan kind of mentioned that he's trending in the right direction. I don't know if he'll be ready officially. Can you give us an update on kind of him, Bruce Irvin, and some of the other guys that are kind of coming back from injury?
Yeah, you got Bruce Irvin in my head right now. I'm glad we finally found out yesterday it was an ankle injury. I wish we knew that last week. I know the speculation was it was an ankle injury because that was on the injury report earlier in the week, but we were all speculating this weekend, what the heck are they doing? We need some edge rushing. He's expected to be fine. He should be back on Saturday. I do expect Frank Ragnow to play too. I almost think they were holding him out a little bit this game to make sure that he's near 100% against the Broncos, because Dan Campbell said it himself in his press conference. This game is serious for him. It's an important game for the team, don't get me wrong, but also having Sean Payton come into town, who's coming in to embarrass him. They need their offense. They need to be able to run that game, run the ball, so they can stand up to a hot Broncos team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, moving forward, one thing that concerns me even in these next couple games, or in these last 4 games, because it's turning out to be a much tougher stretch than maybe we initially thought at the beginning of the year, this defense. How in the world is this defense going to survive and at least be able to, I would say, hold teams just enough without one of their best players, Ali McNeil, out? Because I don't think their defense has necessarily been as bad as some people have said. I think the offense at times has put them in some bad situations and even given them some pick sixes and fumble sixes, which count against the defense's scoring. But still, that is a big, big loss. And I think, in a way, I don't know if it completely reared its ugly head against the Bears, but the reality is they lost. And with Ali McNeil in there, I think they would have been a little bit better. So is that a concern moving forward?
I think it is. I think it should be the main concern. And I also agree that they haven't been playing as bad as everyone, as it feels.
Sure.
But at the same time, they haven't elevated their game or gotten better enough where it gives me confidence that they can play a good, complete, consistent game against a good team. Like, even the Eagles, who are struggling, you picture them going up against that offensive line and that rushing and passing attacks. I know it's DeAndre Swift, but it's hard to picture the guys stepping up against an elite team like that. Maybe they're not elite anymore, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I get you.
The tricky part is that the deficiencies of the defense make the other deficiencies worse. So Ali McNeil goes down. The run defense starts to struggle. They aren't getting a pass rush. That leaves Jerry Jacobs and Cam Sutton out on an island, and it's not a successful formula having Jerry Jacobs one-on-one with DJ Moore. And not many quarterbacks. That's not a good formula for many cornerbacks, but definitely not Jerry Jacobs, even Cam Sutton. So if they're not getting pressure on a quarterback, that just means that much more time that the cornerbacks got to try to stick with these receivers, and they're going to see better and better ones as we move down. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson, we're going to see a couple times. CeeDee Lamb. We might see the Vikings and Cowboys five times in a row, 2 teams in 5 games, depending on how the playoff game shakes out. So there are going to be some number ones that need to be shut down.
Yeah, and Cortland Sutton, man, he's a mismatch. 6'4", he's a big receiver. I want to ask you, Tracy Walker, what's going on with that?
To be honest, I don't know. I was really surprised to see him not get the start. Ife Melifonwu was in there for him, but
he didn't play too bad. I didn't think.
No,
but all right.
I don't think Tracy Walker played a snap. Was he an active scratch? Almost. I was thinking it'd be a perfect game for him to show out.
He did not play a snap, no.
Yes, he wasn't injured on Friday. I didn't see him on any injury report, so I don't know. I thought it would have been a great game for Tracy Walker. Brian Branch he only played about 50% of the snaps.
Yep.
That was a little peculiar to me. I would have think you want as many playmakers as you can, sort of, especially at the nickel position with Justin Fields' escapability and some of their strengths over the middle of the field, though. So I'm going to be honest, I don't know what's going on with that safety room.
Yeah, it seems like they just wanted to switch something up.
Yeah.
Get Iffy out there. They got Vildor out there, Kendall Vildor.
It was good to see him.
He
plays tough.
Yeah, he
couple
does.
plays.
Yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife in that secondary.
Yeah.
So I don't hate it. Thank you, brother. Good stuff today, man. I appreciate
you guys. Thank you.
You can check out all Broder stuff again, woodwardsports.com. You can follow him on Twitter.
MattBro21.
There you go. And, of course, Woodward Nights, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Check those guys out. They crush all the time, every night. The best night show in the country, some would say.
Yes.
I think they'd win that argument. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we'll get into some of the storylines we wanted to get into yesterday. I want to start with Jameson Williams because I got more to kind of discuss here, and it's interesting, to say the least.